Howdy folks. If you don't know me, I'm an Australian guy, but I currently live in Belarus. And I've been living out of Australia now for 3 years. And I'm back in Australia now for 2 weeks, and I've had a bloody great time. I really have. I've really enjoyed myself here, hanging out with all the people that are important to me, that live in this country. It's been really good, you know. And then part of me is like, dude, Australia's a pretty good country. Like, shit works here. Yeah, technologically we're kind of backwards a bit, but it doesn't matter that much. The basic infrastructure is good. Things work here. It's generally pluses in Australia. I'm like, why don't I just live here then? Right? Now, before I answer that question specifically to me, I want to talk about guys I know that have left their countries for a year, 2, 3, like indefinitely, or indefinite plan to be indefinite, but then don't then actually go home, right? Actually might spend 2 years out of the States and decide, you know what, I just want to go home. It's not what it's cracked up to be. Drifting around the world or relocating to a new place, and there's too many negatives I didn't see coming, right? So my business behind the scenes is like a consultancy firm for people who want to come to Belarus, right? So I have the website, obviously, Married in Minsk, and I've helped heaps of guys get to Belarus just to understand it. I have like a kind of a dating business thing as well. Actually, a guy, I actually approached for him, a girl some time ago, and they just got married. How cool is that? Foreigner, I won't give any more detail than that, but a foreigner with a local girl with a very big age gap. That's pretty cool. So I do this kind of stuff ongoing, but the main thing I do is the consultancy calls, right? So a guy might be in the US or something, and he's like, okay, this guy's in Belarus, he's Australian, he seems legit. I'll give him a buzz and try and get the lowdown on Belarus. And because, if it's not obvious, I'm not going to say everything on camera, right? It's not in my best interest to do that for a multitude of reasons. Some of them are really bloody obvious, some aren't. I'm pretty straightforward. I give it how it is, more or less, but I don't skip some of the detail and some of the nuance and a lot of the detail, to be fair. Guys call up and we have like the 1 hour consultancy or 2 hour consultancy, just chat about whatever, visas, prices, just how it really is here, what they can expect, English level, sometimes it's really basic stuff, sometimes more complicated. And what often happens is these guys use the hour to strategically kind of get in my inner circle, right? And often what will happen is I'll meet these guys. I've met heaps of guys who'll be my clients when they come to Belarus, right? And sometimes not even in Belarus, sometimes in other countries. That's happened a couple of times too. So I kind of keep in touch with a lot of these guys, and I see their paths. And as I say, I've seen several that have kind of left with the intentions of not really coming back, and then they've gone back. Now this is still a minority, don't get me wrong. This is like 10, 15% or something of guys. It's not like the norm, the rush of guys going back to the West. That's not happening. But I can see why the guys that go back, I can see why they go back. I can see. Things are changing around the world, other countries are catching up and blah, 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 or catching down, if you will. So I can see why they do it. And I'm like, realistically, what's stopping me from moving back to Australia? I've got so many good friends here. I've got a good life here. Everything's comfortable. I'm familiar with everything. And I have to say, it's one main thing. And that is, when you're a young single dude, bachelor living in a city, Melbourne, where I am now. In fact, you know what? I'm going to turn you around. You can watch what I'm looking at. I'm in the city centre of Melbourne right now. Let's turn you around a bit. So yeah, when you're kind of a younger single guy, living in Melbourne, it's a pretty good life, yeah? Like, it's good, man. You got your mates around, you got lots of money, restaurants are good, stuff to do, it's your culture, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's somewhere where, it's a nice place to live, essentially. Yeah, weather's up and down, and yeah, there's the politics, which is a mess, and it's only going to get worse, blah, 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 but, it's still pretty good. You just kind of cut yourself off, especially if you're not too connected to, working in the government, whatever, blah, 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 then you're not as exposed to it. And just doing your own thing, it's fine, But what I've noticed is, my mates that are married here with younger children, especially kind of my gen or even younger generations that I'm friends with, what I've noticed is these guys are fucking stressed out, man. These guys are just like really worn out. I've noticed how kind of sticky and clingy they've become in an interaction. Like, they don't want to leave. You can see they don't want to leave. if we're hanging out and it's midnight, they got to get up at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning for work, they don't want to leave because their life's tough, mate. And why is it tough, you might say? Well, it's tough everywhere, right? You're raising a family, it's hard to do that everywhere. Sure. But in Australia, we have this thing where everyone kind of earns the same amount of money, essentially. We have a very compressed pay scale, certainly vis-a-vis the US. Excuse me. And of course, this is more a female thing, right? Women want material goods. They want to be more comfortable than everyone else, right? It's just in their nature, it seems. So what kind of happens is, look, the guy's happy with the basic house, the basic lifestyle, whatever. But the girl kind of instinctively wants to be higher up the hierarchy when it comes to money. So the guy's often working too much. Then what typically happens too, unless the guy's earning like top 1%, the girl will go back to work. Now, if he is earning top 1%, okay, the girl will stay at home and whatever. She's happy to do that. And that takes the pressure off, because all of a sudden, when you're both getting home at 6 and 7 o'clock in the evening, everything's already done at home and you're good to go, And you're not constantly driving around and whatever, cleaning, cooking, shopping, blah, blah, blah. Like, things are already done. And it frees up, as a household, it frees up resources for the household, right? Whereas once you're not in that top 1 or 2%, whatever it is, the girl will start to work. And then all of a sudden, everyone's getting up at, alarm at 6 o'clock, alarm at 7 o'clock. Then eventually everyone's home by 7, kids got to go to bed, like it's just... And then on the weekend, there's this constant commitment of having to go to, other kids' birthday parties and drive the kids somewhere to do this and that and whatever. It's just this constant kind of onslaught. And of course, a big problem with Anglo cities is because we have this migration model kind of put upon us, that we can't live where our parents lived. We can't afford it, right? We have to move out 30 kilometers, And then everyone goes in different directions and all your mates are 3 hours away. Maybe exaggeration, let's say 1 or 2 hours away, right? And that's one way, not round trip. So you kind of get isolated, And this is really bad for a woman too. If a woman wants to stay at home, she's out in the middle of whoop, she's going to get bloody lonely. It's a miserable life, mate, just sitting home with the kids. It's bloody hard, You need social networks. You need your friends and family around you as a woman in that situation. It's a totally failed model, putting her home alone with a couple of screaming kids. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But that's what you've got. You've got this kind of diffusion of people, dispersion of people around the city. And they go to different fringes, east, west, north, and they end up kind of nowhere near each other. And have this kind of breakdown of family and social connections. And people are just kind of lonely. This is kind of what you see. Just from, again, the younger guys who are married with kids, they're just really isolated. And they're good guys, balanced, sensible, smart, fun, earn good money, but their lives are shit, man. Quite frankly, I mean, all it would take is just for their wives to stay at home, but they can't really afford it, because if they want to be on this churn of consuming, they've got to have the new car, they've got to renovate the house, they've got to buy a new house, they've got to, it's this constant, endless demands. It doesn't matter how much you earn. There's always more demands on what you can consume and buy and whatever, especially if you're not in that kind of top 1-2%, right? There's no stability. You're always striving for more. You're never content. So for me, it just seems like you're a slave for this kind of economic machine. It's broken down communities. Again, if you could just live close to the friends and family, have the woman be at home, not be obsessed with this kind of ongoing consumerism. I mean, to look in my friends' houses and to see the amount of toys their kids have. I just was at my mum's house and I looked at photos of me when I was a kid, right? 40 odd years ago, and there wasn't many toys around. It was just like a rug, a couch, a few plastic things I was playing with. And then you go to my mates' houses and you've just got entire rooms filled with toys. And it's like, they don't need this, mate. It's not going to make their lives better. Now, some are interesting, some are like, functional, kind of, I don't know, quote unquote educational, dare I say it. You can see some would help with their development. But it's just bloody overkill. So, although we're kind of rich in Australia, we're actually really poor. Kind of lonely, separated, and no time to ourselves at all. So this is what I see. Now, it sounds fucking grim, right? What I'm saying sounds grim. And there's ways to get around this potentially. You can move to the country if you wanted to. maybe this would help in some of the situations. But as a general rule, if every guy just starts to make more money so their wives can stay at home, it doesn't make any difference, because it's always the relative levels. It's the relative to the rest of the population. So if everyone's getting richer, no one gets better off. So this is what I see, and this is kind of the main thing driving my decision. I'm like, if I set up in Belarus or Colombia or Thailand or whatever, pick your country, I'm going to be able to afford to have the wife stay at home. We can be with at least her family, and I can potentially bring my mother or parents as well over, and we're just going to have this time. And there's not as much consumption going on. There's not as much social pressure. The social pressure on women to work like there's in the West. So we can just have a better life in the end. A better life, not stuck on this kind of industrialized consumption treadmill with, again, kind of broken up social circles and family structures, because we all have to move. We can't afford a house where our parents are. That's a big thing. That's a huge thing. So we can't all live together. You can't all be organised and live together or near each other, right? So your parents might be an hour or so in one direction. Your in-laws, your wife's parents might be in another direction, and then you got up, and you just see what happens, yeah? So that's kind of why I'll leave in the end. But I will definitely keep strong ties with Australia, because it is functional for the time being. And yeah, it's political. I just was watching state television, then Australian state television, in my stepfather's nursing home, watching it, and holy shit, it is radical. It is radical. It's 1984 stuff. It really is crazy. Australian state television is so extreme. After having watched Belarusian state television, Russian state television, and Australian state television, Australian's the most radical, yeah? I mean, they're all obviously pitching their ideology and whatever, but the Australian ones, oh my God. I mean, if this was to really infiltrate society and really formulate what's going on here, which it kind of is, you can see we're headed down a pretty dark kind of path. You kind of wonder, how did so many extreme things happen in history? Why didn't people know? Why didn't people stop it? And whatever. But you can see the propaganda orgy that surrounds these things, and you can see it in real time now. Talking about social Marxism and related concepts. So anyway, that's another reason. That's another reason. But you can kind of get around that a little bit. I mean, if you have good values, you're close to your kids, your immediate social circles are similar. You're careful what school they go to and whatever. I mean, they still got to associate with other kids that aren't fucking absolutely brainwashed as well. That's kind of tricky, but it's not. All is not lost, I guess, is what I'd say. It just makes it difficult and complicated. But anyway, that's kind of why I wouldn't stay in Australia, to be honest. I don't plan to, even though our culture's great. And that's one thing you probably underestimate. One thing you probably underestimate is actually how good places like Australia are in terms of just our culture and just how we are. And there's a reason why we're successful, why our societies function, because we're decent people. And wherever you look, it's countries where people are just decent and honest that tend to do well economically. And it's a place where people are dodgy, and shifty and dishonest that don't do well. It's really as simple as that. So typically what you're looking at as a foreigner moving out of the West is moving to a worse country. Now in Belarus, it's a bit different because Belarusians are quite good. They are quite genuine, and quality of people there are quite good. It's like talking about other countries you might go to that are outside of kind of Western influence, or are not Western per se. There's a lot more corruption, a lot more dodginess, and there's a reason why their societies haven't done as well. And people don't trust each other, and people are ripping each other off. There's constant corruption and bribery and whatever, right? So you kind of realise these things as well, what you're kind of missing out on by not being in your own country. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I will be leaving tomorrow, early in the morning. Not too early, 12:30 flight, midday flight, thank God. Not an early one. I had to get up at like 3:30 in the morning on the way here a couple of weeks ago when I was coming back from the Philippines. It's pretty crazy stuff. So Anyway, give me your thoughts, guys. If you want to chat with me some more, you can go to my website, meredithminks.com, and we can have a more candid discussion if you have questions or queries about life in Belarus.